Hello, Russell Jennings here with Build Your Idea, and in this video we'll be talking about the three things a browser works with: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is the content of the site. We wouldn't have much without it. We can view the source of the Yahoo website by right-clicking and viewing Page Source, and this is everything that goes into a website behind the scenes as far as the content goes. CSS is the styling of that content. We can actually disable CSS and see how things would look without it. This falls back to the browser defaults based on the type of elements. JavaScript is how we add behavior to the page and make it interactive. Sometimes this is to send data back to the server without having to reload the entire page, or it's to enhance the usability of a page. For example, this right here is JavaScript, which means it's manipulating the page to control what gets displayed up here. A web server ships all three of these things back to a browser. More specifically, it sends just the HTML page, which then itself requests CSS and JavaScript resources. It can also request other things, like pictures or video, each of which is another request to the web server. JavaScript, HTML, and CSS interact with each other to create behavior in an app. For example, JavaScript might add a class of error to an HTML element, which sets the background to red per the CSS definition for that class. Often, sites will offload a lot of these loadings to a content delivery network like S3, which is an internet service optimized for delivering files anywhere on the internet. So instead of people having to request 15 different files from your server to load a web page, they can request a few from your web server, and the rest can be requested from S3 directly. This also makes hosting images easier, as you don't have to worry about running out of space on your server for file uploads. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are still evolving to make web development more powerful. The newest thing has been HTML5 and CSS3, which makes building websites that work on a variety of devices easier, as well as adding other welcome additions like animations. Like how our server generates HTML to send back, we can do the same thing with CSS and JavaScript. With CSS, we can use something called Sass, which allows you to use an enhanced version of CSS using things like nesting of rules and variables that are not native to CSS. This then gets compiled out into CSS for the browser, but what we have to write as developers is a more enhanced and terse, clear file. The same is true for JavaScript. With CoffeeScript, we write what is a terse domain language which generates code for us to be rendered in the browser. This is called metaprogramming, code that generates code. Now you don't need to use either of these if you don't want to, but they ship as a default with Rails because they offer an improved experience, so it's not a bad idea to give them a go or something similar. That's all for now.